This video is powered by the pros at Pascal Air Plumbing and Electric. Arkansas owned, Arkansas operated. GoPascal.com.
Other times you got to work with it. James Teague can help you with all of that because he is not just a former Arkansas pitcher. We've got Esquire at the end of his name because he is a real lawyer working at the Teague Law Firm and has been for a while now. And we always appreciate these visits with James Teague on these Fridays. James, how was the rest of the visit to Florida last week? You doing okay back home?
It was good. Yeah, it was good. We got back home. We got relaxed and rejuvenated, and then back into the craziness of the office. So it was good.
That's right. I wanted to ask you about. So they've got an Arkansas pitcher, and Dylan Carter, who was dealing with arm soreness over the last week, and it flared up again after pitching an inning yesterday. Now I think it's difficult sometimes for coaches or athletic trainers to know initially if there's just something wrong with an arm because of the soreness, or if it's just, as you hear described, usual soreness. And by this point of the season, I guess it can be understood, that your arm will just get a little sore, and it's a normal thing. But then there's also the idea that sometimes there's nothing really wrong, and you just end up pitching with that. And it's a fine line to try to walk. You understand. What did you deal with as far as arm soreness and pitching in that kind of a situation, with maybe a little bit of fear in the back of your mind that maybe something's up?
Yeah, you're right. It is kind of a fine line because most days, your arm. There's very few days where your arm feels 100%. Most days you're a little bit sore. You're kind of recovering. You're getting ready for the next day. But I would say most of the time when I was getting loose, I was a little bit sore. You kind of work through the soreness, you flush it out, you get hot, and you're ready to go. Next day, you kind of work through it, go to the trainer, do some work, maybe run, ice, this or that, whatever you do, and then you kind of just get back in the saddle. So arm soreness is really kind of part of the game for most people, and especially this time of year. We've seen Dylan Carter go extended innings. We've seen him go back-to-back days. And so, some guys get stronger as the year goes on. Their arm feels better. Some guys have dead arm. You've heard that word before. So it's really person to person. You really got to know your body to when can I push the limits and when do I need to back off? And it sounds to me like maybe he's been pushed in a little bit and he realized maybe I need to back off a little.
Is there, when you're on a little 4-game losing streak, is there a sense of relief more than anything when you finally get that win and kind of get that behind you?
Oh, for sure. I think after getting swept at Georgia is a little bit of an inflection point in the season because, do we kind of spiral downhill or do we bounce back and get back on track and prepare for really what's going to be a tough SEC conference schedule going forward? And I think it was good to see, Hagen Smith come out and be sharp, see the offense perform early in the game and, kind of get back on the saddle. But Phil, especially when, it's a new day, it's a new game, a lot happens, from day to day. You can have a bad stretch, but then bounce back. So it's just kind of keeping that mentality of saying, let's flush it. We had a bad weekend. Let's move on.
It's another week where Arkansas announces just one starting pitcher to begin the week. We had some questions from listeners recently about the question being, does a pitcher really need to know until the day that he starts that he's going to start, or can that mess him up? Now, you're a pitcher that started and relieved quite often, and maybe sometimes there's a conversation with your pitching coach and your head coach, hey, we're not going to announce this, but you're probably starting game 2 anyway. We're just not going to release it. This is what our plan is, and we want you to prepare for that moving forward. But then there are other situations, like with today, with Brady Tigert getting announced now, and I don't know how long he goes, but I'd be surprised if he goes more than 1 to 2 innings. Who knows after that? My guess would be McIntyre, but it's really anybody's guess. Did you need to know in order to mentally prepare yourself when you were going to start, or were you all right finding out either the night before or the day of?
For me, less time is better because I don't got to think about it, go back and forth. I just get hot, I kind of get into attack mode and go. I didn't do real good as a starter. I didn't need to sit there and think about how I'm going to throw this guy or do that or what if this happens. I'm kind of an overthinker, you might say. So for me, it was good to say get the call in the bullpen, get hot, get in the game, and let's get some outs. So, but, that varies, day to day. Some starters are really oriented by their schedule. They've got all their superstitions. They do this on Wednesday, that on Thursday. And for those guys, they maybe need to know. But if you're not that kind of guy and, the coach tells you it's time to be flexible because, one, you haven't maybe thrown the best, and 2, we're a little bit thin, and you just got to make it work. I think with Tiger coming in today, it's not about really starting and going deep into the game, and more about letting him warm up, letting him have time, letting him go through his routine, so that way he doesn't have his first outing back, rushed, getting hot in the bullpen. So I think you're right. He may go 1 or 2 innings, kind of get back in the saddle, and then have someone who's used to going longer fill in from there.
It's like you mentioned about getting rushed. They want to control the situation around him, and the only way really to do that, so that you don't, so he's not coming in hair on fire because he's protecting a 1 or 2 run lead or anything in the middle or late innings and feel that sort of a pressure. But I watched him throw a pen. He looked tremendous. But that doesn't always translate when you come back to action, because it's a whole different thing once you get on the mound and you're facing a hitter, and there's just a big difference between throwing a bullpen and throwing on the pitcher's mound. And for someone like Tiger, he gets pretty fired up sometimes. So it'll be interesting to watch him even if it's just an inning or 2 as an opener.
It's amazing they talk about those high stress innings or those high stress pitches where you have an easy inning on a Saturday and you throw 20 pitches and you bounce back, but the next week you have a really stressful inning and maybe you throw 25. Well, those 25 the next day feel like 50. Mm-hmm. And so, there's definitely something to that. It's not always just the number of the pitch count, but what was the situation, how amped were you, how stressed were those pitches, how intense was the game. So I think for Tiger, it's eliminating a lot of loose variables and allowing him to come in, kind of set his own pace and just, keep everything kind of controlled. But, I'm excited to see him back. I know a lot of Hog fans are, so I'll be watching for sure.
James, when you have a guy in left field make an assist like that, how does that get the team going? I know you got to score runs to win ball games, but when he's able to make a throw like that and you stop a run from scoring, how does that momentum, how does that kind of get the team going?
Yeah, as a pitcher, you're ready to make that guy your best friend. You're sending him Christmas cards, you're buying him gifts, you're doing everything. That's a total game changer, especially when it saves a run. A tie game, you're able to keep the game right there. I mean, it's huge. I mean, because sometimes, like we talked about before, sometimes guys make mistakes as part of the game, but when they make a play for you, it's, especially when you're trying to, hold on in this close game, it is, you can't overstate how big it is.
Well, what about when it's a guy who probably would have been on the bench had 2 of your outfielders not been injured, and Hunter Grimes, who came here as an infielder? That's one of the things that's really kind of amazing about that play yesterday, is because Hunter, he looked like a little bit of an adventure in the outfield yesterday. I mean, he misjudged the ball, was able to catch it still, made it a tougher play for himself. And you could even see the way that he got over to catch yesterday's ball. He still looked a little bit like an infielder playing the outfield. But like Dave Van Horn said, the way that he threw the ball, where he threw it like an infielder and got rid of it a little bit quicker, is one of the reasons that he got the guy at home plate. It's just there were so many factors that made that an amazing play, the context of the game itself and the thought of that he's like the 5th outfielder.
Yeah, I saw an article, something similar to saying, an unlikely hero saves the day. I think that summarizes it pretty well. Is when you got guys that are athletes, you just put them in the field and tell them to go make plays, and they may not be super familiar with that spot, but they'll find their way. We saw that play earlier in the game with the over the shoulder catch, where you're a little bit nervous watching it unfold, but he'll get more comfortable as time goes on. If he keeps making plays like that, I'm sure he'll get plenty more opportunities.
Did you ever have a drop in velocity, just a little drop in velocity, and how did that change how you had to pitch, or if it did change anything that you did as far as utilizing this weapon or that weapon, or focusing on trying to be a little more perfect with your command? Not like you always aren't. I only ask because it looked like Holland's velocity dropped yesterday in like the 4th inning, and it's a little earlier than you used to see in someone's velo drop.
Yeah, he may be fighting some of that dead arm, some of that, middle towards the end of the conference schedule fatigue. I think a lot of guys go through that. Me personally, my arm was always more dead at the beginning of the year, and it got stronger as the year went on. And that's just kind of how I operate. Whereas some guys, their velocity's up early, they feel good, and then it kind of dwindles at the end. I think for him, it's just going to be a matter of maybe getting some extra running in, some extra therapy, some extra time in the training room, really resting up and, sleeping good, taking care of the body, all those things, and just trying to bounce back. Sometimes, we see in the big leagues, guys just miss a start. They're kind of fighting that dead arm, and maybe that's something, they need to consider with him. But I think for him, he's got the stuff, he's got the command, he's now got a lot of experience. He'll fight through that. He'll be okay.
I thought about this to ask you the other day. I watched, I think it was in Springfield on Tuesday, a pitcher had to catch a pop-up. And it's almost like it's an unwritten rule that the pitchers never catch pop-ups. But whenever you get a chance to make a play, it's like you want to do it, and it feels like a novelty because the pitcher usually is the one who's either pointing up to the sky where the ball's located so that any of the other 5 infielders, including the catcher, can find it, and then he tries to get totally out of the way. I mean, completely out of the way. But I see some other times some pitchers, they're like, you know what? I'm going to show these guys that I can make a catch, a simple pop-up just by coming off a mound. Did that ever frustrate you that you had to get out of the way every time there was a pop-up? Because you're athletic enough that you could probably catch anything on the infield.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to say it, but there's on every team, there's that one guy who's maybe unathletic, uncoordinated, a little overweight, and he ruins it for everybody else. He tries to make a play one time, slips and falls, throws it in the stands, and then they say, pitchers aren't athletes. You guys point to the infield and get out of the way. There is kind of a stigma, the pitchers are kind of a liability out there in terms of making a play. But, when you get your chance to do it, you better not mess it up because you can't live up to that stigma, that's for sure.
Trying to be stereotypical with the pitchers, man. It's like the kickers and the punters, Matt. It's like those are not the athletes, right?
You scream when there's a punt that's short and it's bouncing on the ground. As a punt returner, you scream Peter and you get out of the way. You point at it just like the pitchers. Exactly right.
Yeah, it's kind of like the kicker trying to make a tackle. It's like let's let someone else do it unless you're the last guy.
Well, and then there's the idea that, well, you go ahead and try to throw a baseball against a giant that's got bad intentions with a big metal stick. You go ahead and try that.
And a big old elbow brace. When they had that big old elbow brace, that was kind of intimidating, right? Like, oh, he's kind of scary.
They still wear that thing, man. Did that ever keep you from pitching inside, or did the metal bat ever keep you from pitching inside? Because you know what it's like. You make a great pitch, you get it on the handle. If it's a wooden bat, the thing shatters and you probably get the out. It's one of the things that separates college baseball from pro baseball is that metal bat never breaks, and sometimes pitches on the inside right on the handle turn into base hits.
Yeah, but you reminded me of a funny story. We were at the Super Regional in 2015. I threw a pitch and the guy hit it off the end of the bat, and the metal bat actually broke, and he was just ran down first base line holding the handle. And I got in the dugout, and Bobby Warnes went up to me, and he was like, "You just broke a metal bat. Do you understand what that means? Let's go!" Like, he was all fired up about it. He was real motivated. But yeah, for the most part, yeah, you're right. The metal bats don't break, but that was one time where it did.
A fired up Bobby Warnes is a special. I mean, we see it every day because he's got that kind of personality. I like being around Bobby during batting practice and hearing him, communicate to the players and everything. When you played with Bobby in 2015, did you say, "Oh, this is a coach. This guy's a coach"? What'd you think?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because what you see is absolutely what it's genuine. Some guys, are eye-washed, like we talked about before. They're trying to be rah-rah. They're trying to put on a show for the fans. Look at me, I'm all engaged. That is not the case with Bobby. And I think his personality is so infectious that, it rubs off on other coaches, on the players and everything. And that's why I think he's got the gig and why he's had it for so long is because it is genuine and it does have an impact on the game. And you kind of see that guys get on first. He's the first one there ready to motivate him and tell him good job. And I think the players really appreciate it and feed off of it.
James joined his father, Robert, at Teague Law Firm recently. They've been around for nearly 30 years. Teague Law Firm has been voted best of the best in Northwest Arkansas twice in the last 4 years. James can help with all kind of family law matters. This includes guardianships, adoption, child support, any criminal law matters, traffic offenses, DWIs, and more. James, I want to talk about estate planning today. So I know if you've got an estate need, James can help you out with that. And you can kind of start at any age. And, man, I mean, I'm even in that position at age 46 where I could start the same thing and give you a call. And I know this is something that it's a lot different from much of the other aspects of the law that we've worked with or that we've talked about.
It is. And I think one thing that happens is there's kind of a stigma of estate planning. It's very complicated. We have to do these trusts and all these things, and it's going to be a lot of work. But fortunately, in Arkansas, that's really not how it is. We can do simple wills to get your assets, taken care of. We can do power of attorney, medical power of attorney. If something happens to you, you've got someone in line. If something happens to you, who's going to watch your kids? Who's going to be responsible for them? As setting up guardianship. And so there's really simple things you can do with really simple paperwork, really just to kind of get your affairs in order. We meet with people and it's real quick, and they say, wow, I didn't know this was so easy. I should have done this years ago. And so that's something that, I've really enjoyed helping people with, friends, family, and a lot of people. We've gotten that taken care of, and it's something we can help you with here if you're interested.
Well, we got a number to give them, and we'll do just that. James, appreciate your time and these visits as always. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk Arkansas, Mississippi State next Friday.
Yeah, so remind me. I got some funny Bobby stories if anyone wants to hear them. We live together, so remind me next week. We'll talk about it.
Oh, I'll bring them up. And I'm going to tell Bobby today, batting practice, exactly what I plan on doing, talking with you about him on Friday next week. So maybe we can get him on the show, too. That'd be fun.
Oh, that'd be great. All right, looking forward to it. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, James.
James Teague from the Teague Law Firm, full-service law firm. When you call them, you'll talk to actual lawyers. They will call you back, and you're going to get their cell phone numbers. Call James and the Teague Law Firm at 479-877-1688. That's 479-877-1688. You can also go online to teague-law.com. The Teague Law Firm, if they can't help you, they'll talk baseball. We can do the same. We can talk anything with you. Call us. 877-377-6963.
BetOnline.ag is your number one source for all your basketball info, stats, news, and scores. Get the latest odds and lines, including the latest player reports for this year's pro basketball playoffs. BetOnline is always your sports information headquarters this season, as we have you covered for all your sports wagering needs. Basketball, MLB, NHL hockey, right down to UFC and boxing. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way for you to get your betting info, including live betting options and your favorite casino and card games you can play right from your home. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. Be sure to use our promo code BELIEVE to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. That's BLEAV. BLEAV. Bet online, where the game starts.